Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. And today I'm excited. We got our guest out of Virginia Beach, and he is an exercise physiologist. Spent 11 years in the Navy as a Navy SEAL. And you can reach him. You can find him on social media, on Instagram at Jeff CSCS. You could also check him out and what he does on his website at performancefirst.us.com, and we'll get all of this linked up, of course, as well. But just excited to have you, Jeff, here today. Jeff Nichols, appreciate you coming and spending some time with us here today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. It's now that we're all kind of quarantined in our houses, this seems like a real viable option for
no doubt, right?
for a business now.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Who's laughing now? Podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Schools closing, businesses closing, everything pretty much closing down, restaurants, bars. It's an interesting time with coronavirus. For those of if you're listening to this years from now, we're in the thick of the coronavirus worldwide pandemic, and it's interesting times.
It's a little bit bananas, but we're just kind of talking off camera how interesting that people were uncertain of how podcasts, 10 years ago, 5 years or whatever it is now, it's like, what a good idea of something to have right now to fall back onto in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're primarily, or you basically are 100% of your revenue comes online. And so you're obviously positioned for this pretty well. And I think there's a big shift already of people like, all right, what can I do? What's the opportunity here? How can I make that shift? Just like what you're saying with the podcast, there's going to be a lot more of that and virtual things as we get through this. Who knows how long this is going to go? We'll get through it for sure. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, man, it's interesting.
Yeah, to say the least, right?
Yeah. And then I know we also talked like you just acquired a building, and that can be a little scary at a time like this where it's like, man,
yeah, it is an interesting thing. Like, everyone is asking how everyone's doing and what's going on. And right now we hear that like a lot of the public venues, like you said, are closing, grocery stores potentially, but now like gym spaces fall right into that. Like, hey, things are closing. Like, what are we going to do? And I thought there's a very interesting population to close a gym down on, because honestly, a lot of people, that's their thing. That is really what they do, what they look forward to on a daily basis. So what an interesting thing where you can't go to the gym.
Right.
So now, but again, like I acquired a building, like my home gym is a quite nice home gym, but with the business kind of outgrowing it, essentially my home gym is a video studio. Well, I outgrew it. So it went from, 600 square feet to 4,800 square feet. Well populated with different gym equipment that I've been wanting to for a while to use as a teaching platform. So it's an interesting sort of like, hey, gyms are closing. You just acquired a building to put gym equipment in, but it's a private workspace. It's not, It's not even a gym. There is no membership. There is no anything like that. You get trained by me in small groups, but it is like considering what's going on right now, it's just very ironic.
Definitely. And you think about gyms, like I was thinking about this. I think most like if you think of a CrossFit gym or whatever, right? Like they thrive on community, and now you're telling them you can't have that community anymore.
Yeah. And
it's like, man, no one was wiping bars down and really cared about like germs and things like that, especially in CrossFit, like burpees, sweat everywhere.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, we got to shut the gym down. I'm like, man, they probably have the best immune system ever, some of these large community gym. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I fall on it, but we'll find out and we'll figure it out. But
it'll work it out.
Let's I always like to ask this question to all of my guests is Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What does that mean to you, or what comes to mind for you when you hear Championship Leadership?
Yeah, it's interesting just because I have a background. I've been an exercise physiologist for 20 years now. And before my time in the military, I was a strength coach at university. I've been fortunate enough to spend a fair amount of time behind the curtain, if you will, with a lot of professional organizations, football, basketball, baseball, and whatnot. I mean, as of that, a week and a half ago, I got a set next to my childhood hero, one of them, Joe Girardi with the Phillies,
Oh, awesome.
while he managed 9 innings, just sat next to him the whole game. And so, you know, it's the same thing with, you know, been an opportunity to do that with Steve Kerr and Bill Belichick and a lot of Dan Gable and Tom and Terry Brands, and the list goes on and on. My point is it's not like, oh my God, like, that name, it's interesting because one of the first things when I have the opportunity to have a conversation with great coaches like that, the first thing I asked Steve Kerr, I was like, at what point in your life, your playing career, did you feel like you made it? Right? Like what, it was his response was like, never, like even after 6 rings. The same question I asked Tom and Terry Brands, are the head wrestling coaches for University of Iowa, and theirs was fear driven. And that's the same answer that Joe Girardi gave me. So long story short is, what do I think of that? I think that championship specifically really comes down to a few things, and really it's creating a culture and not the buzzword culture. Like people ask, well, how do you develop culture? It's a very simple thing, really, in the sense of like writing it out. This is how you do culture, but manifesting culture. Like that's what I think of like culture. Championship is process. That's all it comes down to me is like, right? If you look at the SEAL teams, if you look at the New York Yankees, you look at the All Blacks, you look at these teams that, you know, throw up air quotes and go, hey, these are successful championship teams. Mm-hmm. What it comes down to is a process where you can assimilate new or different individuals into that system, and they can fit in because they've been informed, right? Hey, here's our expectations. Hey, what are your expectations of me as a player or as a coach? And then we got to find a compromise or crossroads for that communication. And that is why the SEAL teams does so very well. That is why the Patriots have been good year in, year out. That's why Golden State Warriors are so good year in, year out. It's because of the process in which the administration, the coaches, and the players conform to, based on, we perceive that there is a real opportunity for success. The Yankees, year in, year out, right? That's granted, you could say, well, it's because of money. The finances allow that process to be a little bit more finite than maybe its competitors. And that's the edge now. Yeah. The bat's still the bat, the ball's still the ball. We have got to develop the process, and that they'll say develop talent in the community, like the financial community, it's a process. So like that's what I always come down to. And championships come down to the process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you named some big ones, like Belichick is one that always comes to mind for me, or Nick Saban is another one, that just these guys that they've just found a way. They have a process that they stick to for sure. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but yeah, absolutely 100% that they believe in. And I'm sure they're always tweaking and innovating, right, to stay atop. Yeah. But they found a way to stay atop when you got all these other guys that are elite and the best in the world at what they do, as far as all these other coaches at the highest level, and the cream always is rising to the top. So it's always an interesting conversation around that. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, you know, you just mentioned a number of well-known figureheads and coaches and people, especially in the athletic performance side of things, professional sports. What was the path that got you there? I know you also mentioned that what stuck out to me is you were in the Navy for a time, but before that, it doesn't sound like you went right into the Navy. You did a number of things before that as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I had, as far as a strength coach is concerned, a pretty normal path. I was a former college athlete. You know, there's years before that as a youth that, like, I was so finitely focused on athletics for whatever reason. Yeah. You know, my parents were the greatest cheerleaders and supporters ever. And they rarely would say no when it came to, like, hey, I want to try this and do that. And I'd be like, all right, go. Like, it developed a real sense of, how do I say, like, I wasn't afraid to try, you know, like that really was something my parents has gifted me. But, you know, like when I got to the end of my playing time in the college, I was like, it felt like I still need to be rooted into that team atmosphere. So having a real affinity and enjoying training, made that natural step, at least in my opinion, that natural step, going from professional or going from amateur athletics into strength and conditioning, where I felt like I like sport and just in general, I really appreciate and like. And so for me, I always say being a strength coach is a really cool thing, because I don't have to have a bias towards a sport. Like, I'm a big baseball fan, but I can coach football athletes because I love watching them. I love training them, right?
Yeah.
Same with volleyball, whatever it may be. Like, it's really cool because I don't have to be a bias. Like, I don't, as a strength coach, I may have an affinity, like I said, for baseball, but for me to pay the bills, I need to be a football coach, strength coach. Yeah. And I don't, like I said, fortunately, I don't have to make that decision anymore. Yeah, but
right.
So as a strength coach in college, and then just, again, the same thing. I was compelled, for lack of a better term, to continue or again be a part of another team. And my focus was professional athletics, had some opportunity to play pro baseball. Just, that calling inside me was to go serve the military. And ironically enough, as a child, I never thought that, that was not an option necessarily. It wasn't against it. My father was drafted into Vietnam, didn't talk anything, and never spoke about it at all. But it just struck me one day where it's like, that's what I was compelled to do. And now in hindsight, I look at all of my training for baseball and everything, physically, emotionally, mentally, the failure of it, it created the person that it readied a person to get through that selection process is what it did. The processes, all those processes of work and effort, especially in wrestling and baseball and the focus of it. But when I was ready to go into buds, it was just like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to just further prepare to make sure I'm ready for that sort of beast. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then as an exercise physiologist, going through 11 years in the teams and seeing that perspective was very cool, because it taught me a lot more about, okay, now that you're in the system, you got to treat your body differently than, the selection side of it.
Right. So. Yeah. So you get out and maybe talk about what was that path to where you are today?
Yeah, that's it. Again, it's interesting. It's like a reverse order of why, again, I got in, right? I had to take off that, I guess, that uniform, so to speak, figuratively, literally. I take the uniform off and then get used to not having that. And then, okay, I got to pursue something with as much zest as I did that community side. And I think that's, I had this conversation today or yesterday with someone, like, one of the really unique things that comes from the SEAL community, I think, whether it's certainly the community will develop this mentality, but I think a lot of us end up getting in similarly, like where, hey, if I'm going to choose a profession post-service, like, I just have got this initiative. I've got this zest. I'm not afraid to try and fail. Like, that's a big thing. Is certainly I'm not going in it half-hearted, but I have zero fear of failure when it comes to trying something that I'm generally passionate about. Yeah. I think that's where it's like, well, it's a shiny object and it stalls out, but I know I'm certainly passionate about training and coaching. And so the only thing I have to do is keep learning. If as long as I keep learning, I can stay fresh in that field. I'm very, very content. When I stop learning, I get bored, I get restless, and the clients and the athletes that I work with don't enjoy it as much. So that's a big part for me is, got to this point through passion. I'm using the process of the SEAL community, essentially, of how finite and effective and thorough, the brief, debrief, like what's going on, like have thick skin, be able to take constructive criticism. That process, which thrives within the SEAL community, that really, I rarely see anything better than that process. You do it in sport, you see it sometimes in the financial field, in the corporate world, you see pieces of it. But it's like, man, through and through, the system is really good. And so now I just use that same sort of approach and methodology in my business, and it works quite well. At least maybe it's largely in part because of the profession of I'm still training the population that I'm really familiar with.
Yeah, definitely.
emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who are some leaders, some coaches, some mentors, whatever you might want to call them, that have really impacted you and who you are today, and what you do, and how you impact and coach and lead others, and really less like who is it, but really more so like what is it about them that stands out, or that maybe you've taken and helped mold you as who you are and who you are as a leader.
Yeah, and these are kind of in no particular order.
Mm-hmm.
These people I really revere and look up
Yeah.
to. Maybe it is in an order, but not really. It's not meant to be. I guess Coach Richard Shaughnessy is the director of strength conditioning for Troy University. He was the strength coach, the head strength coach, and he's since moved up essentially within Troy. He's still a very close friend of mine, and he taught me so much. And some things are invaluable. One is just holding whether it's a corporate, it's a sport, it's strength conditioning, whatever it is, military, it's like being able to hold a crowd and own that crowd. And like when you're teaching and communicating, really having that presence, like he really taught me how to own a room. And then that obviously it's like, not everybody can coach, not because they don't have the knowledge, but because they can't own a room.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first things he taught me. And it's not about yelling. It's about, it ultimately becomes knowledge-based. That's one. So Richard Shaughnessy is a huge, huge component of my success. The other person is Mark Stevenson. He's a director of sports performance for the Lions. Before that, he was a strength conditioning program manager at the command I left. Before that, he was at the NSCA and was a director of tactical strength conditioning. He created it. Okay. So what he taught me, again, this goes all throughout my life, is be a very critical thinker. Don't just when doesn't matter who it is. When someone's like, hey, this is what you're going to do, I want to audit the information. And if it's mathematics, it can be done, right? Whether we're talking about the coronavirus or we're talking about the bench press. Math is the universal truth. So if I want to know about programming, how to improve it, that, I want to know what the math is, right? It's like, if I want to know the spread of a contagious virus, I want to know what the math is. I want to know where it's at, who's doing it. You know what I mean? So for me, that taught me a lot, because especially in the field of strength conditioning or fitness, whatever it is, there's so many new things coming across, like new beverages, new supplements, new device, new tracking device, new whatever it is. And we've all got to become critical thinkers and go, okay, what's it measuring? Why do I need it measured? And more important, can this device or whatever do the measurements? Does it actually have the means to do so, for example? So those are two people. I could list many, but I guess the last one, kind of a little bit different, is Dr. John Sullivan. He's a sports psychologist, has been for the Patriots for years and years and years. When it came to sleep and some other things in stress management, he's as good as it comes. And he was a very big part of my life. Me recovering my health. I was in really poor health for a long time. I was opiate addicted, really bad place for a long time, about 8 years or so. And he was one of the first people that taught me to understand why I was doing what I was doing, how I became an addict, why I am, like all those sort of things of like, okay, these things don't just happen, right, by chance. Yeah. And a lot of that too is, self-discovery and self-responsibility. And that was something that John has helped me with a lot, is just saying, hey, listen, good, bad, or indifferent, the common thread in anything that happens to you is you. So that was one of those things that is extremely helpful, is taking ownership of everything in my life, the good and the bad. So that's been someone that's very, very helpful to me.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That's love it. The owning the room or the owning the crowd, I think, that sticks out. And, I don't hear that talked about a lot. Well, that is so important, isn't it? And
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's the same. I make it akin to this, as like when a police officer, like a very in shape police officer, a very out of shape police officer, for example, comes and speaks to a classroom of fourth graders. One of them is going to really hold the room. One of them is not. Yeah. And I know this just because there was an example, a buddy of mine is a police officer, narcotics guy here, that this happened to. There was a out of shape, in shape. And he was one of my buddies in shape. And,
Yeah.
and I mean this with respect and love. I just mean as an example. It's like,
yep.
The little kid throws his hand up and is like, well, what if that person comes to try to rescue me? He doesn't look like he can. And like my buddy was like, well, then
kids are brutal, man. There's just
that's what I mean. Like it's one of those things you go, oh, it's real. It's real, you know.
It's a great question though, right?
But again, if you're holding the room, if you're handling the room, you know, you don't have to be in shape. Forget that by any means, but it's just an example.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So I know, you know, you just got to spend a day with Joe Girardi and many others. What's the impact of the path that you're on here going into the future? You know, championship leaders definitely have great vision and the courage to take action, like decisive action on that vision when it's probably, there's a reason they're championship leaders because they have a different vision than most others and they're willing to take action on it. And then they rise to the top and they win and they have a ton of, like you said, the air quotes, success. Right. So what is it for you though? Like what kind of impact do you want to make? You know, you're surrounding yourself with others that have performed at a high level. What's that look like for you in the near future?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting because had you asked me this question a couple of years ago, I'd have this very elaborate, actual vision of a palatable,
sure,
you know, physical, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this ego is a jerk. Right. So
yeah, totally.
and it is not your friend. So, you know, I would have said, yeah, this big building with all this stuff and have all these. Now here's the deal is I don't know. And let me say this though. I'm purposely don't know because all I do know, okay, can I know this is where my brain is at half the time is trying to keep focused on the now, which is always very difficult for me. Now, granted, I don't not have plans, but in the short term, very short term in the next couple of months is the way in which I develop my athletes and train them. It's a process to include very specific equipment. And so this will be the first time in my life I'll be able to take and expand that equipment list because I don't have I have a great gym, but it's just too small. It doesn't have the room for additional equipment to develop athletes I'm fortunate enough to work with. So the near future is the process I keep talking about where like my process is good. My process is exceptionally good for my athletes, but now it'll get better. Not because all of a sudden I have this inherent knowledge, but now I know that I can build this location out. I can include, especially like my business manager, Catherine, she's my better half as well and brilliant. And we have the business capability of making this what we know it can be. And the goal is just the military, law enforcement, and fire departments are probably the most underserviced organizations that we as human beings have and that we expect from. Good, bad, or indifferent. Like we don't care, and it's okay. As civilians, we don't care what's going on in a police officer's life, but we expect them to be there when an emergency is called. So that can't sort of like love-hate relationship the civilian population has with the police department. Reality is they're incredibly underserved. And so in knowing that from the back, you know, from my profession and I work with police officers all the time, my hope is that, you know, whether if you're in the SEAL teams or you're a Major League Baseball player, you're not struggling to find who do I find to help alleviate my lower back pain or who do I find to help as a mental skills coach. Like those things, if you play for the Patriots, it's just a couple questions away and you're going to find somebody who wants, right? Military, law enforcement, fire don't have that.
Yeah.
So if we can begin to at very at least create a location that answers some of those questions, right? Okay, I'm having all these problems with back pain, lower pain, shoulder pain, or I'm prepping to go into this service and I need to improve my run time, swim time, whatever it may be.
Yep.
There's got to be a place where it's like, if you go to that place, you train there or use those programs, those are very concise, precise, reproducible, reliable, and predictable manners manners in which to do so. And so it's like kind of a long answer. A short question is, I want to continue to be a point of education for these underserviced populations. That's it. Like, I really think, because when I was in the SEAL teams, there was in part also because I had the background in it, but so I could look, but there's unlimited resources in people, time, money, and physical location, right? You know, you look at sport, it's almost that. The limiting factor in pro sports is quality of character of humans. And I don't mean that, be it bad people, but I mean, if quality of character in humans, it means in that sporting lifestyle, are they becoming students of their profession, or are they just talented? Yeah. The military and law enforcement certainly has talent in its own regard, but military and law enforcement and fire, they want to be there. Like, they really want to be there and learn and improve and create longevity. Yeah. Whereas a lot of pro athletes, I say a lot, I'm talking all sport. Yep. They're really skilled. And if they didn't have that skill, they're not going to be there. Right. Doesn't matter how much you want to be there. Right. So, but the population of military and law sports, like, they want to be there. That's the big difference. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that want to be professional athletes, but are never going to be, right? Exactly. And so it's the different demographic, and that's okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. That's great. What's a time that in your life where, you know, and I'm sure you got many, we all do, critical moments, defining moments in our life where we kind of maybe come to that crossroads, and had you not made the decision you did or taken the action you did in that time, you could be somewhere very different in life. But of course, you know, you did make the decision that you did, and that has you right here where you are today. I think there's a lot of listeners, entrepreneurs, business owners, they can find themselves in this moment, and especially probably more so now than ever with this coronavirus thing and the worldwide pandemic we got, and just the crazy time of it. More so than ever, probably there's some people in these moments trying to figure out, like, all right, if this is a critical moment and decision, and my life can look very different depending on which way I go. And a lot of times people it's the power of hearing others and how they've made those decisions and how that's impacted them, I think does help them through their own decision. Mm-hmm. Is there a moment that comes to mind for you as I ask a question? You know, I could go different routes with like career moments and this, that, but like for me, a life-changing moment outside of being a father is, and again, I don't hold myself prisoner anymore to my decisions, my past decisions, because those don't define me at all anymore. Yeah. I was opioid addicted for quite a while. I've had OD'd a couple times, tried to kill myself, and those weren't low points, right? My low point was the way I treated people. Yeah. My low point was, especially someone that was near and dear to me, close to me, my fiance at the time, you know, I was unfaithful and just an asshole, quite simply. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that was the one thing that certainly was not a top behavior for me, but, you know, to kind of bring this big ship, you know, turned around, is that, you know, for me, like, I realized that, like I kind of mentioned before, we, especially for those of us in these leadership championship positions, right? I think that there's a problem that the world has kind of demonized changing your mind. What I mean is, if you change your mind even for the better, it's like I have to weigh being a hypocrite versus, okay, I'm going to walk this line and not be a hypocrite and create more focus on me. So what I realized a long time ago is that my problems, good, bad, all my problems, I was the common thread, right? Mm-hmm. Not even just in part, right? Not certain things like, well, that's not my fault, but well, I was actively involved in it, so it's my fault, you know? Yeah. And so when I really took stock of what the truth of my life was, like the real truth of treating people right, or like I was like trying to do the right thing, or it's like trying to build a business, the first thing that came to mind, the first thing that has to happen is you've got to love the people closest to you. You've got to share that love with them. You've got to be open to it, and you've got to admit your mistakes to those people that you're closest to, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to create a bunch of small lies or bigger lies eventually to support all that nonsense of the noise in your other life. And it's going to come back in your own personal life, and it always does. And so that's the big thing I tell people is like, if you really, really want to be successful, truly successful, then you're going to have to stop being afraid of the things you've said. If someone audits your past, good, bad, like talking trash about somebody else, lying, exaggerating, all those sort of things in your own personal life. If you clean that up, right? The things, the passion that you may not even have, like a lot of people are just kind of, I think, floating on that cloud, not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of that though, too, is us trying too hard to be something that we're not, right? Yeah. Exaggerating, inflating. Like if you're just really, really kind to everyone that around you, especially the ones you're closest to, you're going to see a lot of that static and that noise clean up, and you're going to have a lot better idea of what you should be doing with your life. Yeah. And that's what I encourage people. It's like, yes, we want you to chase your dreams and do all those sort of things and do what your gut tells you to do. But before all of that, before you do any of that, you have to take stock in how you're treating other people, because now you have a clear indicator of how you're treating yourself. Yeah. Because if you're treating the people around you very poorly, okay, it's certainly you're not showing self-love either, and you're probably not going to even forgive yourself.
Yeah, so true. Wow.
So that's, you know, I've had a lot of therapy. Yeah. I've done a lot of aggressive brain therapy, from psychedelics to other sort of things. And, you know, that's really what it comes down to is everyone's good enough. Everyone has greatness. Everyone has greatness in them, especially born in this country. You win the genetic lottery. Yeah. Right. I don't care what color you are, what race you are, what creed you are, what sexual orientation you are. Like if you're born in the United States, man, you have an advantage. If you're born in the United States with a parent that loves you, if you're born in the United States with parents that love you, if you're born in the United States with love, you've won the genetic lottery. Yeah. So like that, I just want people to keep stock of that is, you know, life can be great, but it's only going to be great when you're being truthful to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That is definitely powerful. And, you know, the other thing you're saying is basically just taking the responsibility for everything that has happened to you and not deflecting it or being the victim and owning it. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah.
You betcha.
I want to wrap this up and respect your time here today. But as we do that, like what would be one or two things you could leave with the listeners that if they implement today would help them move their life forward today?
Yeah. One would be just keep in mind that, you know, when we're talking about achieving something, we'll just use the word success again, something successful. When you're trying to achieve success, you know, we kind of talked about this, some evolution, like what gets you there typically won't keep you there.
Yeah.
Right. That the work, the focus, even the course, the direction of what got you to be a successful athlete, coach, teacher, entrepreneur, understand there's going to be evolution that's going to have to happen. That's a big one. So what keeps you there isn't what got you there.
Yeah.
That's one. And then the other one, you know, for me is that, I mean, it still comes down to, you know, personal accountability is it's not that you're alone. Like I would say, hey, if you want to do it yourself. Like there are people around you, right? And that's the trick. Like that's the ploy. It's like, you've got to surround yourself with people that want success for you and that you are happy to see them successful. That for me is a huge litmus for a person's personal state of mind.
Right.
Is like, if you are happy to see your friends be happy, that's awesome. And be that. Awesome.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself kind of like, even your friends like, meh, that's you. That isn't your friend. That isn't right. That isn't, right. It's your own personal projections of negativity that make you feel that way. It has nothing to do, right? Like there's enough love and kindness for everyone to give infinitely and receive infinitely.
Yeah.
So that's the big one, is like the people that you love in your life, be happy for them. And when you see them be successful, be happy for their success. Because when you are excited about something, that's who you're hoping to get that admiration back from, and that affirmation is the people you love.
Yeah.
So be that for them too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you taking time today. And again, listeners, we'll get all this linked up for you as well, but you can find out more about Jeff at performancefirstus.com and on Instagram, Jeff CS. And yeah, I just appreciate you and honor you for being here today and had a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. If you ever find yourself out to Virginia Beach, we'll get you in the facility and take a look at it and give us your thoughts.
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely.
You betcha.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Yep. Take care. Thank you.